All right, so this is the work session meeting for Minnetrista for May 4th. So I'm going to do a roll call so we can see who all is here, hear who all is here, and then also that'll be our sound check at the same time. So present are myself, Lisa Whalen, the mayor, council members, Pam Mortensen, are you here?
I am here.
Mike Molitor.
I'm here.
John Chamberlain.
I'm here.
Shannon Bruce.
I'm here.
Our city engineer, Allison Fauski.
I'm here.
City clerk, Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
Our director of administration, Ali Palsos.
I am here.
Director of administration, next on public works is not here. City administrator, Mike Baroni.
I am here.
Finance director, Brian Grimm.
I am here also.
Community development director, David Abel.
I am here.
And also, so I don't think Ron Beatty is here, or our chief of police. Is that correct, Mr. Baroni?
Correct.
All right. So we also have Mr. Hartman with Waste Management on the line as well to answer questions. With that, we'll get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We only have one agenda item for the work session this evening, and that is to discuss the recycling. So first, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As the mayor has mentioned already, Jason Hartman from Waste Management is also available to answer any questions as we go through the packet material, and feel free to, ask questions as we go. And I'll try to, at the start here, highlight, I tried in the memo encapsulate everything that was in the packet and try to provide enough information to hopefully let council just give some of the background, as well as, make an informed decision on how best to move forward. So as you saw in the packet, the first pages 4 through 6 were the extension that we proposal that we received from Waste Management from Mr. Hartman back in early March, and it basically laid out the terms of a 5-year up to a 5-year contract. I think later in the memo I talked about they would be fine with if it was somewhere between 3 to 5. Anything less than that would be something that would have to be discussed further. Then on the next pages was our current contract with Waste Management, pages 7 through 13, just to show what we've had the last 5 years. You can see we've had a really great, I think a lot of that was based on when we entered into the contract back in 2015. It was just a different time, a different market for recyclables. So I think that was a really good deal for the city at the time. And I guess, yeah, that's there as far as I did send out this afternoon. I got from Mr. Hartman that graph that showed the national average there for the last 5 years. And you can see how the demand for recyclables on the resale market has, I guess, really gone down, or to try to put it nicely, I guess. Then included was just a spreadsheet also from Hennepin County that showed some 2018 information on the different haulers and different rates for the cities in Hennepin County. One thing to point out, I think it was mentioned that in anyone that really entered into a contract in the last few years, their rates have really gone up in comparison to what we have right now. Next was the, I think pages 15 through 19 of the packet was the city of Orono. Just as for comparison, they had gone out for quotes in late 2019 and ended up extending with Waste Management after they had gone through that process, and just wanted to at least show you, and I think they're sort of a comparable city as far as, size as well, geographically, as well as population wise, number of people that use recycling or that are in the system for recycling. After that was some information on grants, the SCORE grant and the organics dollars, as far as the counties making a move to change the percentage there as far as what they give for dollars based on straight up curbside recycling and organics. After that was, I guess, the fee schedule, and I think I noted in there the rate's been $9.50 a quarter since at least 2005. So just for some history, as well as just information there, that rate has not been changed in quite a long time. Based on, I mean, the fund has been cash flowing based on having a good contract in place and stuff, or a good rate. Lastly was just some of the information on the current financials from 2019 revenues and expenditures, as well as a balance sheet showing the current cash balance. Or I guess that was the second to last item. And then finally, the page 27 was sort of a worksheet showing based on the rates given by Waste Management or the proposal, what our projected expenditures and what our potential, phased in rate adjustments would have to be. So I don't know. That's probably a lot of information to start with. So maybe I'll just turn it back over to the mayor, and people can go around and ask questions. Or at some point, I guess we could have Mr. Hartman also chime in as far as any additional information.
Sure. First of all, Brian, I'd like to start out just so we are clear and understand the Hennepin County recycling reimbursement, I'll call it grant, whatever. So currently, we were getting $22,000 a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct based on looking back at the information, and it's, you can see the trend. It's gone down a little each year because of there's a portion now of the percentage that's shifted to what cities are doing with organics. So, but
well, that's my question. So, for instance, in next year, maybe even this year, we're going to be seeing about a 50% reduction. In other words, it's going down to $11,000 a year versus the 22 if we're not offering any kind of organic recycling, any kind of organic, whether it's a central drop off or per household, or curbside. But my question is that 50% 100% reimbursable if we do any type of organic program, or do we only get the amount of money that we actually spend on a organic program?
And the way I understand it's based on like our level of participation, what we're doing as far. I mean, you can see I think on that sheet on the packet on page 20, we're really because we're not doing a whole lot of it. I think in 2019 we got $356 for what we've done on organics. So it's based on our numbers we turn in and such as far as to the county. So it's just. So
in other words, if we say we offer organic recycling to every household in Minnetrista, regardless of whether it's curbside pickup or it's a centralized location for drop-off, do we get the full $11,000 back?
Well, the way I understand it's based on, I think it's sort of a sliding scale, I think, based on how aggressive. I mean, like if we had a curbside pickup for organics versus a drop site, I think you get a higher percentage of that grant back or whatever. But seeing we really haven't done either so far, that's why it's basically non-existent what we get back on the organics. And really on the overall percentage of our revenue, it's not a whole, to me, it's not a real big difference maker, I guess. I mean, you may have to spend $11,000 to get the $11,000 back. So, I mean, as far as from a pure financial standpoint, I don't really know if the organics. I mean, it's more of how important it is to the services to the residents of the community, and how important it is to the city council to offer what type of level of organic service, I guess.
This is Shannon Bruce. I have a question.
Okay.
Yep.
It would be helpful to have this conversation if we knew what the criteria is from Hennepin County for qualifying for that grant money. And I didn't see that in the packet, and it's hard to determine what the best course of action is without knowing what the criteria is for getting that grant money. And I think that's what the mayor was asking is if we have drop off or if we have curbside, and what qualifies for getting reimbursed. And can anyone address that?
That was my question too, Brian. My understanding originally, when the county said you have to start offering organic recycling, my understanding was that they held a carrot out there as an incentive. And they said the first year, if you don't do it, we're going to take 20% of your grant dollars away. The second year you don't do it, we're going to take 40% away. And the third year you don't do it, we're going to take 50% away. But my understanding wasn't that they were not going to give it back to us, as long as, my understanding was it was going to all come back to us if we did the organic recycling. But you're saying you're not sure that that's the case?
I guess we really haven't done much of it before. I'm not.
Can't hear you, Brian.
Oh,
Brian?
I guess, yeah, I don't have 100% answer as far as that. I just know basically because we haven't been doing any organics work, they've been taking away a portion per that sliding scale as per the agreement. So I guess until we know what direction.
Ask? Yeah.
Well, we could definitely follow up with a question and bring that back. I guess I don't know if that's I guess I don't know if we were looking for a final decision tonight on organics, more of a discussion on which way the council even wanted to go as far as right now the proposal would be for waste management would be it would be a drop-off site. They don't offer any type of curbside organics program right now currently.
Right. Well, the only difference it would make is whether or not we would start it in September. Let's just say we do waste management, and so then the new contract starts in September. We would want to know before then, if they're the people we're going to go with, whether we're going to do organics or not, and how much we're going to get reimbursed. So that can be, something we can look into and come back with, and we can maybe focus more on the current contract or the extension of the contract, or where we want to go from here on the regular recycling. So with that, anybody else want to weigh in?
John T. I guess my only interest in settling the issue on whether we did organics would be the cost. Obviously, we'll want to go as green as we can, and if there's a real concern amongst the citizens, residents, I would favorable of it. But as Brian said, and looking at just this drop site rate, if we can't have curb pickup, I don't know how many are going to buy into going to the drop site. And then as the costs become more prohibitive than the money we gain from going into the project.
And I guess
I
was just going to go ahead as far as the cost for the drop site, just from what the waste management would provide. That was on the bottom of page 5. So that cost isn't very expensive. You can see it was, whether it's 2-yard or 4-yard or weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, that, on average it was, different options ranging from 500 to 1,000, 1,200 a year, depending on, at least in the first year or whatever. So, but obviously you got to have a site and, maintain it. There's other costs that go into it than just the contract.
Right.
It probably wouldn't be that much cost to it, other costs to it, but it's at the most the 4-yard whatever canister, along with weekly pickups. That was the highest, was just under $1,600 a year. But if that gains us $11,000 a year, the other extra minimal costs that would be associated with that would be more than covered with that $11,000. So I think that's why that conversation and that understanding really needs to take place.
There are other criteria that I saw in the packet talking about whether the program is an opt-in or an opt-out, or if it's and I can't help but think that those specifics will affect how much of that grant money the city gets. I was on the phone today with some people from St. Bonnie, and Brenda Fisk is their city clerk, I guess. I'm not sure what her position is.
Administrator, yeah.
Administrator, and they have an opt-in program, and Randy's Sanitation actually does organics recycling, and they don't charge the city anything for it. And she told me that they actually got $3,000 for their organic recycling from the Hennepin County grant, and they get $5,000 for their regular recycling. So they have an opt-in program that's free from Randy's Sanitation. And I just think there's a lot more information that we need to get before we're even equipped to even discuss this.
It's Jason Hartman with Waste Management. I can explain some of this, if you guys don't mind. You know, the Randy's Sanitation Program, their program is done through the trash service. And right now, I'm sure they're offering it to current residents of Minnetrista. Anyone who has their trash service, really all they have to do is buy these blue bags. They call it their blue bag program. They put it inside their trash can, and then when the trash is picked up, they bring it back to their site and sort through. You know, they have a robot go through and pull out the blue bags and pull the organics aside. So I'm not sure. I know you're a subscription market, but I don't know where the numbers fall within your city of how many homes have Randy Sanitation versus Waste Management versus Allied Waste, and so forth. But that's how the blue bag system works, and it works through the trash service with Randy's, I should say. I can tell you some statistics that, you know, we pioneered a subscription-based organic service in Robbinsdale. And to this day, we've struggled to get that above 10%. The drawbacks to subscription organics is you're only going to get about 10% of your homes, which drives the cost up. Cities like Minneapolis and St. Louis Park do have, you know, curbside organic pickup. Both cities, everyone in the city has to pay for the program, whether they use it or not. And then what they'll do is they'll opt in to get a container. But once again, those are kind of the three scenarios of which I've seen quite a bit with, you know, the way people are using organics.
St. Bonnie was quoted, they quoted me as having 20% opt-in from their residents.
Okay. And is that, they have containers, or is that through Randy's, you said?
They distribute containers to St. Bonnie is a much smaller town than Minnetrista. I think they've got 800 total households and 120 are participating. So they pick up their bags at City Hall.
Okay. Yep. So they're what they're doing is they're participating through the trash service.
Yes.
No, it's through the recycle. Hold on, just Mr. Hartman. I believe Randy Sanitation does their recycling in St. Bonnie, if I'm not mistaken. And so St. Bonnie then offers their residents an opt-in. If they want to opt in, then they can also do the organics, and maybe there's a price directly to the residents, or maybe there's not. I don't know, but Ms. Bruce, do you happen to know?
There is no cost to the residents. Randy's doesn't charge for the recycling organics.
But they do, so they have Randy's for recycling.
Yes.
And then Randy's offers the opt-in at no extra charge of the
Correct.
recycling.
Right.
Correct.
And I
Okay,
believe,
yep, go ahead.
and Mayor and Council, I believe the opt-in is if you select Randy's to be your trash hauler, you get the organics. So we have a contract with Waste Management for our recycling. Sounds like St. Bonifacius
has their contract with Randy's for recycling. The recycling, as Mr. Hartman pointed out, is not included in the recycling contract. That is done through the refuse garbage hauler. So the opt-in is, we're already grabbing up your recyclables. You want to buy our garbage service? If you do, you'll get to be able to recycle organics.
No, I don't, Mike, I don't think that's how it is. And again, we'll have to check on it, but Randy's offers recycling only. So Randy's does recycling for a number of communities
Randy's
around.
Sanitation service.
No, they also offer recycling. Okay.
Sure.
So there's recycling, and if you have recycling, this is my understanding, but again, I could be wrong. If you have recycling with Randy's for recycling, you can also opt in for their organics recycling, but you don't have to have their garbage service in order to get their recycling service. So that's something we would have to check on.
Yeah.
But one of the things we could do in order to find out how that all works, one, contact Randy's and find out how they operate. But I think we also really need to find out how this grant, I'm going to call it reimbursement program, works. Do we get the full $11,000 back if we offer organics of any organic recycling of any kind? Because if we do, then we can do the centralized location, and we'd be ahead of the game
financially.
Yeah, and I think we can follow. We can follow up on that. Obviously, if I want to point you to page 27, and obviously, you know, it would of the packet. It's a component, and obviously, the more revenue we can get, the better. But when you're looking at when we're talking about whether we can get $5,000 or $10,000 back, I mean, we're talking about 5 or 10% of our revenue and our basically our, you know, our budget, or, you know, revenues and expenditures. Because obviously our revenues, we just are trying to charge back, you know, a fee to make it cash flow. So, you know, obviously we'll follow up on the you know, that organics. You know, if they're proposing to do a drop site, what would that do? Would the county give us 50% credit, 100% credit? Obviously that turns into $5,000 or $10,000 a year. But obviously the vast majority of what we're you know, discussing and looking at is the curbside recycle, and what the effect of the market there, as far as, you know, what a potential contract and hence utility rate would be for our residents. So I guess point that out. I guess, I mean, we're looking at, you know, revenue, you know, in 2021 in that $165,000 range, and that grant money that has the organics share is probably somewhere between $0, $5,000, $10,000. So just, you know, well, definitely just wanted to point that out, that organics is a piece, but obviously as the overall recycling program, it's still a pretty small piece in the grand scheme of things.
Brenda, Ms. Fisk was telling me that they have to report on how many households opt in, and I assume that we would have to report if we had a drop-off location. We'd have to report to Hennepin County how much was dropped off. And I think a question to ask is, realistically, will we get people participating in dropping off organics enough to make it even worthwhile and will we get any reimbursement at all if people don't drop off? Because I'm skeptical that people will drop off organics just because of the mess.
You know, this is
totally. Oh, this is Pam, and I totally agree with that. I don't know how many people are actually going to drop off. I don't know too many people in my circle that would make that effort. So I think that's important. Also on the organic drop site, there was the city is responsible for any contamination at the drop site. I don't know what that means. So I think could somebody explain that to me as well?
I think Mr. Hartman maybe could answer that.
Yes, typically the cost for organics is $25 a ton. There is always a certain amount of, trash that's acceptable within the organic material. The issue is if there's too much of it, they will just consider the whole load as trash. And essentially, instead of charging us $25 per ton, that rate will go to $80 per ton. Where we would be fine covering the 25, it's just if people abuse the system. And the one scary thing about drop sites is, sometimes we'll look at it as free garbage. So we typically always ask that if it is a drop site, it's in a city property and only open during city hours, or you have a camera where, you can find people that would drop off, TVs and that type of stuff that's tougher to get rid of than instead of just dropping it off and then making it, waste management's problem.
Yep.
I have a question.
This is Councilmember Molitor.
Go ahead.
I've got a question.
Mike, go ahead.
I mean, a couple concerns. I think that point just made it was a very good point that this is probably going to be subject to abuse. Not just, obviously those are some pretty extreme examples of TVs, but I can just see people using them as their garbage disposal because then they don't have to pay for garbage service. So, and then to the point about if we're going to have to report on opt-in rates, that means someone from city staff has to be there with a check mark and ticking the stuff off every time someone shows up. And that's a lot of burden for what could be a very small return. Even if it came back that Hennepin County would give us 100% of their grant back, which I can guarantee you right now they won't. It's got to be curbside because that's what they're leaning towards. So it's going to be some number less than that. I really think that this whole concept of a centralized drop site probably should just be put to bed right now. I think we can move on to other things that I'm just not convinced that that's a discussion worth having.
I agree with that.
There's some good points Mike and Pam made. I don't disagree. My concern is this. Eventually, right now you're saying we may lose $5 or $6 or whatever, $10,000, $11,000. But eventually, if we don't offer any kind of organic pickup, let's say curbside pickup or no organics, then we're losing $22,000, potentially more.
Nope. That's not right. Basically, we get 22,000 is what it was before the organics push. What is going to happen is that they're phasing down to where 50% of the SCORE grant will be based on organics and 50% on the curbside recycling. So obviously we're doing curbside recycling. So that's where I think the 11,000 is as low as we could go. And then it's just a matter of so it's not the full 22.
Okay. All right. That clarifies that. So then, but eventually we have to do organic recycling. Is that correct or not? Well,
I guess I'll maybe ask Mr. Hartman a little bit because I don't see that anything in the Orono contract was organics. And I also did talk recently with the finance director over at the city of Mound. And it sounds like they'll probably be going out in the next year or so. And again, from the correspondence I had with her, I don't think they were really going to plan on participating real aggressively at all in organics either, based on some of the things we've talked about, the potential cost, contaminants, etc. But maybe I'll let Mr. Hartman maybe follow up on if I'm have some of those points correctly.
What the city of Orono did is they made it part of their trash haul. To get a trash hauler license, you had to offer an organic solution to your customers. They kind of, package that with like yard waste, how that's typically the trash hauler picks up the yard waste. They did that with their organics program as well and put the onus on the trash haulers to pick up their organics.
Okay, but they have waste management, and you don't do curbside recycling of organics. So what is Orono offering then?
We have a very small portion of the trash hauling contract of Orono. We do have all the recycling, but we have a very small percentage of the trash hauling. customers. It's
And
a
for the,
city like you guys are, where residents
okay.
use their own hauler.
So do residents in Orono have the choice of whatever hauler they want, and they can choose whether or not to pay for organics from that hauler?
That is correct.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
That makes sense
But
to
then
me
you're
as well.
forcing. But the only question I have is then the city would have to pass that same ordinance, and then every trash hauler would be forced to offer that service, whether it's financially
No.
viable for them or not.
That's not true. No,
I think they
not?
all are anyway.
I don't
No,
know.
here's
Until-
this is Pam. Let's say I currently have Black Oviac and I wanted organics. If I really wanted it that bad, I would consider changing my garbage hauler. Somebody that would accept organics. Does that make sense?
Well,
Yeah.
and Black has said that they will offer organics if they're required to.
And I don't think
Well, I
we
haven't had
require-
that conversation.
I had the conversation with Steve Blakowiak last week.
Okay. What I'm getting at is Orono has made it mandatory. If you want to be licensed as a trash hauler in Orono, then you have to offer organics to your residents. So whether you want it or not, it's still offered. I mean, certainly
Doesn't mean
if we
have
want to
to.
go to, we don't have to, but that's maybe how they're getting around the organics issue of the requirement.
It's not required.
And that, well, they're saying all of their trash haulers have to offer it.
No, someone needs to show me where it's required that we provide organics. It's not. And the only requirement there is that we get more grant money. But if we decide to forego the grant money, we don't have to offer organics, recycling.
Well, let me ask Mr. Brony. Mike, do you know?
Mayor, I do not know. I know Mr. Hartman might know. The only reason I'm deferring to him is he said that they have a very small percentage of their recycling business in Orono, and I think you're still working in Orono, if that's correct, Mr. Hartman. So you must have offered some sort of organics to whoever your customers are there, however small.
Yeah, we did offer, like I said, if people wanted to get a 32-gallon container, we do offer it as a weekly service. We did that, like I said, just to stay compliant with what the city wanted, and we do have the recycling contract. So we obviously want to keep our trash customers as well.
Sure.
Hennepin County has done is they've mandated that all cities of a certain size, offer organic pickup by January 1st, 2022. And cities under 10,000 people can offer a drop site. That's why I put drop site pricing on our extension bid, is just to keep the city compliant with Hampton County's mandates. But yes, there are.
So the cutoff is 10,000, or if you have 10,000 or more residents, then you have to supply or provide organic recycling, correct?
Yeah, curbside.
Oh, curbside. Okay. What if you are not 10,000? Does anybody know?
Well, we're already in that boat. We already know.
Well, we're not 10,000. So your question, Mike Molitor, your question was, show me that where does it say that we have to offer organics? So that's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, okay, so the answer I heard is by 2022, we have to offer curbside organics if our population exceeds 10,000. If it doesn't exceed 10,000, then I assume there's no changes to what we're doing now.
That's not what my understanding was. Mr. Hartman, do you know?
I believe you need to provide some sort of alternative to curbside, and that's why I put a drop site pricing in. If there was demand to have it curbside, I would say that would be one thing. But what we've seen so far, it's been a struggle to get enough demand to justify the price that it will cost. I'm trying to look. I had found it before on the Hennepin County site, the exact verbiage of what what requirements are.
Okay, so by 2022, we have to offer January of 2022, we have to offer some type of organic recycling. Since we're under 10,000, it can be a centralized drop-off location. Once we hit 10,000, then it has to be curbside.
Correct.
So we can, all right. So here's where we need to go with this. We could just decide for now not to do organics, okay, and then explore the grant dollars and explore the options a little bit more. But my question is, are we prepared to go ahead tonight and say, yeah, we're okay with waste management continuing to do our curbside recycling program? I'll start with Ms. Bruce.
Yeah, because this is a 5-year contract, and from my understanding, most of the trash haulers that are operating in Minnetrista are already offering organic recycling, or they're willing to, and it wouldn't be burdensome for them to do that. If we would decide, and obviously we need some more information, but if we were to decide to let people choose their trash hauler, but require those trash haulers to provide organics, and then they could, my understanding is they report to the city how many people opt in to their services for organics, because we have to report that to Hennepin County. Because they're already doing that, Allied Waste Management, Black Kowiak, Randy's, I think Black Kowiak's the only one that isn't currently, but they are willing to. I'm not sure why we wouldn't do that, because that leaves it up to residents. It would qualify us, I would think, for the grant money. And then we wouldn't have to record contracts with anybody.
That's what I said 10 minutes ago, yeah. All right. Yeah, that's what I said about 10 minutes ago, that we would have to require every garbage hauler within the city of Minnetrista to at least offer that. So we're saying the same thing.
I think, all right. This is Pam, would we even have to require them to offer it, where we already have Republic Services and Randy's offering it? The resident has choices already.
Exactly.
And I don't feel like I should call Black Kowiak if there's so little demand. It's going to cost them money, or the other services that don't carry it, when we have options and the resident can do that.
That's a good point. I agree. That's a good point.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I think if somebody wants to have curbside recycling organics, they have options. They can do that. They can use one of the haulers that provide that. I don't think we need to change anything in that regard.
Okay. Then where are we at with the contract with waste management? Then it just comes down to curbside recycling.
Yeah. I'll weigh in real quick on this. I think they do a great job. But the concern, it's not a real big difference, but we're right now paying $350 per month, and it's jumping up to $495 a month. And I know it's been a long time. It's just percent-wise, it's a big jump, but dollar-wise, it's not.
It's a little bit less than what Orono is paying. If you compare their 5-year plan to the proposed 5-year plan for Minnetrista, it's slightly less.
I would like to see an RFP for this to go out.
And
Okay?
okay. My thought on this is, given what we've seen for the prices of the material plummeting and what we've seen in neighboring communities, I suspect if we went out for an RFP, we might get a slight savings, but this is a little bit different than a lot of other city services, such as, repaving a road. This will impact every household in the city if we have to switch out contractors, because everyone has to get rid of their old bins and get new bins. And there's going to be a price increase regardless. So if you look at it from a citizen's perspective, it's going to be, you're putting me through the hassle of switching haulers and you're going to increase my price. Why are we switching haulers? So I'm kind of leaning towards, unless I thought there was going to be some dramatic savings with an RFP, and I'm not convinced there is, I would be inclined to stay with Waste Management just from the less hassle factor. That's my concern with that.
One of the reasons I think that Orono's pricing came in where it did was previously they were paying $297, and I think it was just adjusting for the difference. And I think our pricing could be better. I think we're looking right now at a 41% increase with a 4% increase each year after that. And by the end of 5 years, it's a 65% increase. So I think we might get some better pricing if we tried to get competitive on this.
Well,
Mr. Chamberlain, John?
Pam.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I weigh in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't disagree with a 3 to 4% increase. That's pretty normal for every company for the most part. The problem is the jump from now to this next coming year. Is there any way we could get Waste Management, if we keep them with this conversation we're having, to drop their rates a little bit more, at least going into this year, so we don't have that big of a jump?
That would be a question for Justin Hartman.
I can't do that tonight. I would need to talk to my, the financial guys. Typically, what I've been told is what the price I've been given is our price. If there would be any fluctuation, it would be pennies. It wouldn't be the big drop that, you would be looking for. I just know.
Could it be somewhere in between the two prices of $350 and $495?
The unfortunate part with the pricing is, the time you signed the first contract back in, or not the first, but the contract back in 2015 to where we are today. Back in 2015, commodity values were up over $100. It cost around, $50 to process the material. So you were looking at a $50 a ton value of the commodity. Today, with commodities down, and an $85 processing charge, you're looking at paying in, that $40 to $50 a ton. So that's why the swing is so big. It's kind of a double whammy of sorts. The processing charges have gone up while the commodity has gone down. And that's where, why we're in the situation that things are in today. This started in about early 2018, and we honored the $350, even though we knew at the time we were upside down in the contract. What our pricing is pretty straightforward, and I have to kind of say that's where our pricing will be at an RFP as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I talked with staff earlier before the meeting and last week regarding recycling, and I had talked to them about doing an RFP. And I know that it would be some time on staff's part to do an RFP, but I guess my bigger concern or question would be how could we do recycling and then offer our residents an option if they wanted to opt in at either their expense or no expense, whatever, to do the organics. That would be my only take on it, maybe we could get an extra service at no cost to the city. That's kind of where I'm thinking. I understand, Mike Molitor, what your concerns are. Their price goes up, and then they have to also have a new hauler. But let's do an RFP, see where it comes in at, and if the difference is, like Mr. Hartman says, pennies, we're not going to make that change. But if it's significant enough, maybe we want to consider it. Then we can consider how much of an inconvenience it would be to make that change. We could look at it then.
Before we go down that path, you have to be careful here, because I was talking to city staff about this before. If we put out an RFP and we get the lowest price from somebody else, and it's only a couple of pennies, I think we're obligated to take it. And I don't want to put
not with
our
an
residents
RFP.
through that.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike, Ronnie?
Yeah, I was checking into that, Mayor and council members. I'm not exactly sure. I would have to run it by Mr. Beatty, but I think the RFP says you have to take the lowest responsible bidder, but I think the city also has the option of rejecting all of them. So you won't have to select the lowest bidder.
That's not an option.
I think this would be different. This isn't really a bid process. This is a request for quotes. So it's on a professional service. So correct. But so I mean, if Randy's or something came in 2 cents less than Waste Management, I don't think we would have to take it by any means. This is a little different than a competitive bidding process. So
I want to be sure about that before I sign up for us.
I understand. Yeah. No, I understand that, and that's a good point. Obviously, like I said, if it's a few pennies difference, even 5 cents or something like that, the inconvenience for everybody, I don't think would be worth it. But if it's a lot different, again, what's a lot? That's also somewhat subjective. But at least we could look at it. But if we're then obligated, I don't think we are. That's my understanding of the law. But I think Brian's correct. It's asking for a quote, not a sealed bid. So
I have a question for Mr. Hartman. On page 14 of our work session, it lists all the recycling rates from all the different haulers. And can you sort of speak to what makes for the difference between, like, you'll see 3 haulers. Republic is a hauler that goes to 3 cities, and they've all got different rates. Are the differences in those rates just because of volume?
Sometimes it's volume. Sometimes it's when they bid the contract. If the contract was bid, pre-China sword, you'll see prices substantially lower. If it was bid after it, the prices are substantially higher. Some of it is just a change in policy, from, management teams. There's all sorts of reasons behind why prices are different from city to city. But the biggest thing I would say is timing.
Well, I also understand from talking to other haulers for garbage that it's also a matter of geographics. And so if you have a small city, let's say like St. Bonnie, where you can get through that entire city, all 800 households in an hour, I don't know what timing it is, but a lot faster than you could get through Minnetrista, regardless of whether we had 800 or 2,800 households. It's going to take a lot longer because of our geographical area. And I'm sure that has to be considered in some of these prices.
Yeah.
Well, based on the prices for St. Bonnie, I'd say you're wrong. They've got one of the highest ones in the whole group. So I think it goes back more to what Mr. Hartman was saying. It's the timing. I mean, St. Bonnie's price is $5.30, and it's double what a lot of the others are.
Yeah.
So I think it has to do with the timing of the contract.
Yeah, I think Mr. Molitor is correct. It's the timing, because you can see Randy's for Medina is at, and that's a newer one, and that's, $5.10. We know Orono since 2018 has gone up to $5.05. Long Lake since 2018 has gone from $3.33 to $4.95. It's the timing of it. Anyone that's had to do a contract in the last couple of years is looking probably at closer to upper $4s to $5.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, John Chamberlain, you haven't weighed in a lot.
I've been listening to all the good points you're all making. I don't necessarily disagree with anything I've heard. If we want to do an RFP and we don't have to take the lowest bidder, I would be comfortable with that. Organics, I think, is up to the resident, the individual. If they want it bad enough, then find the garbage carrier that can probably handle it if the recycler doesn't. The prices did not surprise me. I've been hearing it from other people, and obviously the sheet, you can look at the higher numbers, and I suspect they're all contracts that have been relet in the last couple of years. And so, being we know Orono's was 2018, and theirs is slightly above ours, it didn't surprise me there. We lived on the 350 for years and years, and we know the offshore market for recyclables has just tanked. And China and all of those that aren't taking anything anymore. So it didn't surprise me, and I think it's just something that we're going to have to sign a contract and go with it. And then that brings us to obviously our rates when we have to set them. And I think it's going to be sticker shock initially, but it's something we're going to have to adjust to. So back, organics, leave it up to the resident if they want to get a carrier that does it. Recyclable, if we want to do RFPs, fine.
Okay. So I'm hearing at least, Pam, where do you sit on an RFP?
Just out of curiosity, what would the cost of an RFP be?
It would be staff time.
Okay.
Mike Baroni?
Boy, yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea. I'm sure we could probably find, let's say, Orono's RFP, most recent RFP, and work from that since it's within a year old. But there is going to be some staff time there's going to be differences between us and Orono, obviously. So we'd have to make sure that it's tailored for Minnetrista and not for Orono. But it'll be some staff time to do, that's for sure. I have no idea how much time that will take, though.
And I was just going to ask you, do you have the time?
Well, I'm always probably going to say no, but if the council wants us to do it, we'll find the time. So.
Yep. And could I add one other point? We did actually, for just historical, I looked back and I had vaguely remembered this because it was about 8 years ago. We did do an RFP back in early to mid 2012, and it looks like per the packet item that David and Mike helped me with that back at the time. And so we did RFP for recycling services back in 2012, and we got 3 responses from Waste Management, Allied Waste, and Randy's. And looks like at the time, Waste Management, after going through an RFP and quote process, they came back with the best proposal. And then we ended up sticking with them for, I think, 3 years from 2012 to 2015, and then entering into the 5-year extension in 2015.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you already have an RFP. Basically, you have that outline from 2008, which that wouldn't be. Okay, 2012. So it wouldn't be too difficult to just resurrect that, make sure that it's still valid or it's still current, and then send that out to the haulers. I mean, again, I think to Mike's point, Mike Molitor's point, if it's only we need to double check and make sure that it's not going to bind us to go with the lowest bidder, so that we can just look at it and say, okay, here's the comparisons. They're not that far apart. We're just going to stick with this one. I don't think it's going to be that much time for staff to, like I said, resurrect that RFP, send it out, take a look at it, bring it back to council and say, here's the results.
I noticed also in the current contract with Waste Management that there was a clause that said that if the city enters into an organics recycling program, that it has to be exclusively with Waste Management. So I would make sure that that's not a clause in our future contract, because in 2022 we may choose to do something else.
Yes, correct. Yeah, good point. All right, so right now we're not going to do the organics. We're going to go out for an RFP resurrect that 2012 one and send that out, tweak it a bit, send it out. But prior to that, we're going to check with Ron, our attorney, to make sure that we still have the ability to select the recycler that we want, put it that way, that we still have the ability to make that decision, regardless of who the lowest bidder is.
Before we go down that path,
okay.
I'd like to have a discussion before we go down that path. So, if we do an RFP, and we already have Waste Management's rates in front of us, how big of a percentage does it have to be before we're going to move off of this? So, as an example, I see $4.95 for next year. And we've already talked about the hassle factor. How big of a percent do we really need to think about before? Because, you know, if we think we need to see 20% movement, then I can pretty much assure you that I don't think we're going to see an RFP that does that for us. And I don't want to go down all that hassle if the numbers aren't there to justify it. So I guess I'd like to have a little discussion before we get the numbers back to say, okay, how big of a percentage does it have to be in order for us to consider moving?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because 20% of $4.95 is nearly, you know, $1. So you're talking would have to be down in the $3.95 range, basically.
And,
Right.
yeah,
And
I can't imagine. Yeah, I think we're looking at, based on all the trend information we're seeing and talking to some of our neighbors, that, I mean, I don't want to speak for the haulers, but if we're looking at, at nowhere near 20% of it, I mean, it would be 2-3% max, I would think, you know, could be a 490, a 480, you know, if we're lucky, you know, or 475. But I just think we don't want to have unrealistic expectations that this is going to be a big savings by going out for RFP.
Right. And if we're not going to have that big savings, then we're just kind of wasting everyone's time.
You know, I think 5 to 10% is worth considering, and these are costs that each household is paying every single month, and it may be insignificant
Every quarter.
to a city budget, but it could make, over time, it adds up. And I think a 5% difference in an RFP would be enough to consider switching services.
You do realize that's only a 25 cent difference. That's 25 cents, right? That would be $1 for the entire year. I have a hard time with that. You know, to say to our residents, we're going to spend time and money on.
That's not for the entire year. That's a monthly charge. That's times 12.
No.
Okay, so nope.
Well, it's $2.50, but I was just going to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Bruce brought up fees, and I just want to, and this does not have to be discussed or decided upon tonight, but just so the council's clear, the $3.50 per month or the $10.50 per quarter is what we pay for the recycling service currently. And as we've been talking about, you know, we're trying to figure out where that's going to go. We've got an offer on the table from Waste Management. It's roughly $4.95 and goes up about 4% a year for 5 years. What we actually charge residents is $9.50 per quarter, a dollar less. So we pay $10.50, and we're roughly subsidizing our residents per household $1 a quarter. Is that correct, Mr. Grimm?
Correct. Yeah, and that's through that SCORE grant money and just using fund balance. And we used to have a rebate program we had with Waste Management back in the day. So some months we'd get even a rebate when the materials price was better. So we would use those type of items. Yep.
And so my point is that at some point in time, we're going to have to figure out, even starting with this September's contract, what does the council have an appetite to do as far as charging customers? Let's say it's $5 a month or $15 a quarter that we're paying. Are we still going to stick at $9.50 a quarter or $10?
Mike, that's a good question, but can we not go there just yet until we have the first part decided?
I mentioned that. I totally said that at the top, Mr. Molitor. I said we do not have to decide that tonight, but I just think that council should remember that the $3.50 is what we're paying, not what the residents are paying. They're paying $1 less per quarter.
Yeah,
Yeah, the city is paying $4.50.
Yep.
So like I said, a 5% difference for, I guess, it might be $10, $12 a year.
No, it'd be
So-
$2.50 a year.
Yep. If it's
Yeah,
a quarter less
okay.
a month, it's $2.50 for the whole year.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope.
So I think that is a valid question. Do we want to make this big change and go through a bunch of hassle for, $250 a year? And then as we were not going to talk about it tonight because we don't have time, but as Mr. Baroni pointed out, we then have a discussion about, okay, how much do we want to raise it, if at all? I mean, we have to take a look at that. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
I just don't think we're
Moving
going to get
parts.
the same as we.
Yeah.
No.
All right. So Pam, where are you at now? Let's take
I am
another-
saying for that little bit amount, and that's just sizable with the RFP difference, I'd say no. Just keep what
Okay.
we have right now. The inconvenience of changing all the bins, plus it could change the date of the pickup. Changes like this causes a lot of confusion.
So
and people
I
are
would
really
say-
sensitive about the trash pickup.
They are very sensitive about that. They are used to this. They like their care. We haven't had a lot of complaints. I'd say stick with what we have. I don't think we're going to have that big of a difference to have the staff take the time to do it.
Okay. All right. And John, where are you at now?
I would have liked, I guess, on the sheet that had costs from the various cities to know what was the date of that contract or where that price is from. I suspect, looking at all the $5 ones, those are the current ones, and the $2 ones, and obviously they're different sizes and different costs. They're based on how many stops, etc. But I suspect the $5 range is the more current. I also appreciate that the competitiveness is not going to change the cost a whole lot. And as Mr. Molitor said, even if we got X cents per quarter, it doesn't add up to a whole lot. We will have to struggle with changing the cost here when we get to that, but for the
Right.
quarterly charge. But I would then say we can skip the RFP.
All right. And Ms. Bruce, where are you at?
I'd like to do an RFP. I think it's good practice to get competitive bids when we have multiple vendors offering a service in Minnetrista. And if it's 10%, it could be 10%. And maybe 5% isn't a number that we would make a change for. But I think we owe it to our residents to be competitive for them. And what's a big number to the city what's a small number to the city can be a big number to residents. And I just think it's a good practice to do competitive bids. So I'd like to do an RFP.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing 3 people say no RFP. One person saying they want to go out for an RFP. So it sounds like we're not going to do an RFP. And what we're going to do is, one, we're going to look at the contract with Waste Management. We're going to make sure that we're not tied into them for organic recycling, as Ms. Bruce pointed out. And we're going to check with Hennepin County regarding organics and how the dollar amounts come back to us and what we would have to do. So there were 2 questions. How do they figure the dollars that they would give us for that? And then number 2, when do we have to start? And are we then obligated, even under 10,000, to offer organics? And so I think we just need some more information regarding that organics and also the reimbursement of that. Does that kind of sum it up?
I think it does. So,
Okay. All right. Any questions, staff? Do you have any questions?
I just have one question, real quick. When
Okay.
you're stating that with Hennepin County, could you also ask if we already have garbage carriers offering recyclable organics, does that qualify us as participating? Because we do offer it at the choice, whatever what the resident wants.
Okay, that could be another question. Yep.
We can follow up on that and find out. I know that the county, from the way I understand it, like some sort of organized organics program is what they sort of are pushing or encouraging, you know, so whether that's mandate the garbage haulers to do it or whether the city does something through its recycling program through a drop set or whatever, but we can definitely ask those and those questions that have been brought up.
All right. So staff, do you have any other questions of council? Do you have clear direction? Do you need more direction? Do you have questions, concerns?
Mayor, I don't think we have any additional questions. So.
Okay. All right.
I do have one follow-up,
yep.
if I may. If
Go ahead, John.
If in the future we need to know, as council, as staff needs to know what we know who our garbage haulers are in the city, but do we know how many households each of them deal with? So in the future, if we get back to where Hennepin County needs some proof that we are offering or that we are doing some type of organic recycling, and it's only 3 of, say, 5 current garbage haulers that are doing it for us, whether the resident is doing it or not, but at least the garbage company is offering it. Do we have a way of getting a number on that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'll have to follow up as far as how detailed, like, yeah, as far as percentage wise versus number of homes versus how much we actually, the garbage haulers are provide to us and are committed to provide to us. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good questions. So with that, then we can be adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, hold on.
Yep.
We had 6:38. I think we've got a little time to talk about the revenue side here.
Okay.
Because we already know if we're doing waste management contracts, we know the cost. I think we should talk about the revenue and what Mr. Grimm has put on the last page of the packet of potential price points. I think we should just wrap up this discussion if we can. I'm not.
Well, my only concern is I'm not sure that we are going to have enough time to talk about it, but we can start the conversation. How is that?
Let's start the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with what Mr. Grimm has put out here. I don't have a hard opposition to this. My one request would be just to kind of simplify it and flatline it so that we did $1 a year increase every year, starting at 11, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, so that we kind of amortize it that way. That would be my thought. And we may as well have this discussion now if we can. So I know it's
okay.
not pleasant.
So, well, I have a question for Mr. Grimm. On the page 27 in our packet, it's talking about revenues, and it says other revenue 10,000. What other revenue? Where is that coming from?
That usually, a chunk of that's our investment revenue for the fund. If we do some sort of, sometimes Gary sells some different scrap materials, or we get it back from disposal sites. So there's that in there, but that's usually what that other revenue is investment revenue and some other miscellaneous recyclable sales, I guess.
Okay. All right. And then, is my understanding, I'm trying to find the right page here. What did we have? The fund balance was like 245,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on page 27. That's correct of where it is right now. Correct.
Okay. Well, any thoughts here? I guess my thought here is I'm not sure that we need $245,000 fund balance in our recycling program. Eventually, yes, we need to get to a point where the revenues match the costs. But when we have that kind of money sitting in a fund balance for recycling, I'm kind of reluctant to start raising rates, even if it's $1 a quarter. Especially in 21, when I know there's going to be people struggling.
Fund balance, right? I mean, you see it goes from 245 down to 58. You see that, right?
Right. Yeah,
That's not sustainable.
Right.
No, I
I
understand.
mean, you're getting, by year 5, you're getting to exactly what you're saying. And by year 5, it gets to be more of a break-even operation. And we're sucking up a lot of that. I mean, we're going to incur the higher cost immediately, but we're just gradually incrementing the expense increase. So to be able to do that, we have to dip into the balance. And that's what Brian's putting here is we're going from 245 all the way down to 58. I don't think we want to get, I don't know if you can get much more aggressive than that. I mean, you got to keep some kind of an ending balance there. And it's actually down to 30,000 now. I look at it correctly. At the end of the year. So you're pretty much doing that on his fee schedule here. That's what it's doing. So I'm not sure where you're coming from.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have a question. The revenues that it shows under revenues, the 15,000, 13, 11, 11, 11, is that just the recycling dollars, not the organics dollars?
That would be both, because right now we are getting originally we were getting that 22,000 a few years ago, but as they've put more to the organics, I basically made the conservative assumption that organics, I didn't know where the council wanted to go with it, that, if we don't really do much with organics, our revenue is going to drop on the grant line item to 11,000. But if we do something with organics, or we're able to qualify, then it could be 15 or 17, or it could be higher than that.
It would be nice to see those, a spreadsheet with the organics numbers in there if we do decide to go with organics.
Yep. That would be fine. That would just be a version 2, I guess, or something where our organics revenue is higher. You would, buffer our fund balance a little bit, but if say it's 5,000 higher, it'd pretty much be 5,000 more for each of those years. So it would help, but it wouldn't make a huge difference. I mean, it makes some difference.
And after we know what the reimbursement criteria is, it would be easier to put that together.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think before we decide exactly on these rates, which we don't have to do tonight because unless we're thinking about changing the rates immediately, which I don't think we should do, but we still have quite a bit of time to take a look at these rates and make necessary adjustments if we think it's necessary.
Yep, correct. I don't think there's anything urgent about it, seeing we have a little bit of that fund balance buffer. So it's a good thing to have to help. I mean, the goal was to phase in those adjustments over time versus jumping it from $9.50 up to $14 or $15. So.
Right. I think we all agree some adjustment may be needed, but when and how much, that I think that's going to be the discussion. So are the rest of you okay with holding off on that discussion until we know more about the recycling costs and programs and reimbursement?
Yep.
Shanti, I agree with Mr. Molitor. We're going to have an increase, whether we did RFPs or stay with current, the price is going to jump. So there's going to have to be a rate increase. And yes, there's a nice cash balance, fund balance there, but you can see how quickly that goes away in 5 years, all the way down to 30,000. So I would agree with Mr. Molitor that when we get this discussion going and we have what the rates are going to be or what our charge is going to be, that 1050 is probably not going to fly for me in the first year. It may have to be the 11, 12, 13, 14 tended to fit in my mind a little bit as well. So, but that's down the road.
That's down the road, right? Okay. We do want to take a little break before we come back. So With that, I am going to say a motion to adjourn is in order.
So
So
moved.
moved.
I'll make that motion. This is Pam.
Okay, Pam made that motion, and
I'll second.
John seconded that. So Pam, are you in favor?
Yes.
Mike Molitor, are you in favor?
Yes.
John, are you in favor?
Yes.
Shannon, are you in favor?
Yes.
And I'm in favor. That's 5-0. So this meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for our regular council meeting. Thank you very much.